Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. Today, a January 6th insurrectionist, a violent one, was sentenced to one of the longest prison sentences yet for someone who did what he did, for his role in the violent attack on the Capitol. His name is Albuquerque Head. He's a Tennessee resident, and he was sentenced to 7.5 years in prison after pleading guilty to a felony charge of assaulting, resisting, or impeding an officer. He assaulted police officers with a police shield before dragging D.C. police officer Michael Fanone into the crowd and shouting, "I got one." A chilling, disturbing moment that was captured by Fanone's body camera. Fanone urged the judge presiding over the case, Amy Berman Jackson, to sentence Head to the maximum possible, saying, quote, "Show him the same mercy he showed me on January 6th, which is none." During the sentencing, the judge talked about the larger threat to American democracy. Quote, "People need to understand that they can't do this or anything like this again. They can't try to force their will on the American people once the American people have already spoken at the ballot box. That's the opposite of democracy. It's tyranny. And the threat to democracy, the dark shadow of tyranny, unfortunately, has not gone away. The dark shadow of tyranny, the threat, still looms over all of us. Since 2016, the Republican Party has increasingly adopted Donald Trump's vision of democracy, which only allows for two options in any given election. Either Trump, fellow Republican, wins, or the election was rigged.
Just make sure your vote gets counted. Make sure, because the only way we're going to lose this election is if the election is rigged. Remember that. It's the only way we're going to lose this election. So we have to be very careful. Now, look, this is more than this election. That's a big statement. The only way they're going to win is that way, and we can't let that happen.
That was August, okay? So we all saw this up front. I mean, he was doing this for years, right? We win or it's rigged. That's it. That lie is now the orthodoxy in most of the Republican Party. But this time, they're running that playbook without Trump on the ballot. And it's happening all over the country. Today, for instance, a debate between the Trump-backed New Hampshire nominee for Senate, a guy named Don Bolduc, a guy who is a big lie adherent and proponent, pushed ludicrous conspiracies about people being bussed in from out of state to vote for his Democratic opponent. That's one that Trump himself was trumpeting back in 2016. Now, the audio is a little messed up at the debate, but you can still hear Bolduc's nonsense.
We need to make sure that school buses loaded with people at the polls don't come in and vote.
Just to be clear, you're claiming that buses full of voters who are not permitted to vote here, you're claiming that that happens in New Hampshire?
I am claiming that that is what Granite Staters tell me. And I am saying we need to respond to that.
The perception tautology. I'm not saying it happens. It's just that other people say it happened, and so we should respond to that, which is the fallback of every Republican across the country. But of course, people say that happened because people like Donald Trump tell them it happened. It's just a nice little circle. And of course, it's not true, but that's the kind of rhetoric Republicans are pushing relentlessly in races across all 50 states, although particular attention is now focused on the Senate race between Trump-backed Republican TV doctor and New Jersey resident Mehmet Oz and Democrat John Fetterman, who is currently the state's lieutenant governor. Now, Republicans and right-wing media are already, right now, trying to sow doubt about the legitimacy of that race, including, as Rolling Stone reports, perhaps not surprisingly, the ex-president himself. Quote, in recent months, Trump has convened a series of in-person meetings and conference calls to discuss laying the groundwork to challenge the 2022 midterm election results. As one source who's spoken to Trump about a legal battle over the Oz-Fetterman race puts it, Trump views a potential midterm challenge as a dress rehearsal for 2024. And the propaganda arm of the Republican Party is taking note with just a little under 2 weeks before Election Day.
Fetterman's candidacy, like Joe Biden's candidacy 2 years ago, tells us something pretty dark about the Democratic Party. What it tells us is the Democratic Party has such contempt for voters and for democracy itself, and so much confidence in its ownership of the media and of big tech, that it no longer has to try to win your votes. And to prove it, they can even run mentally defective candidates who can barely speak and not only expect them to win, but expect you to accept the outcome no matter how transparently absurd it is. On November 9th, they'll be telling you that John Fetterman got 81 million votes in Pennsylvania, and they'll threaten to put you in jail if you don't believe it. Why wouldn't they do that? They work with Joe Biden.
So if you could follow that, right, through the rhetorical knots and flourishes, first, it's the exact same formulation as Donald Trump, identical. We win or it's rigged. Tucker's also saying that Trump won 2020, and that rant and all of them are precisely as unhinged as the big lie itself. But pro-Trump activist Tom Fitton and Republican podcaster Ted Cruz, who also happens to be a sitting senator, are both already joining the chorus, baselessly casting aspersion on the early ballots in Pennsylvania, as is Doug Mastriano, another big lie proponent, a person who was at the Capitol on January 6th, though didn't go into it, and also Pennsylvania's Republican nominee for governor.
Your state's acting Secretary of State, Lee Chapman, just came out yesterday saying that she expects the vote count to last for several days, maybe even as long as a week, because they can't count some of those mail-in ballots early and that kind of thing. I'm just going to ask you straight up, is the fix in? Is this a sign that the fix is in your mind?
That's an attempt to have the fix in.
Yeah, what's the deal?
How is that even a conversation? And again, they call us election deniers.
Yeah, and we just had, we have these great American... Right, they're denying.
It's true. Pennsylvania can sometimes take longer than other states to count its early and mail-in ballots. But that's because, stay with me now, the state is not allowed to start counting them until Election Day. If Republicans really thought there was a problem, the Republican-controlled Pennsylvania legislatures, which include Doug Mastriano as a member, could change that. They could let the state start counting those early votes as they come in. But they don't want to do that, because they want to sow doubts in the results by saying the influx of early votes, which are expected to favor the Democrats, are somehow illegitimate. The exact same playbook Trump set up in front of all of us and ran all in front of us leading to January 6th back in 2021. And Trump has made his voters so paranoid and delusional about the vote tallies, they are going to extreme measures to stop the fake threat of voter fraud. As the Associated Press reports in a truly remarkable bit of reporting. There's one county in rural Nevada which is now hand counting ballots because they do not trust the voting machines after MAGA World spread possibly defamatory conspiracy theories about the machines switching votes to Biden in 2020, which of course were false. But as the residents of Nye County are learning, there's a reason we automate this task and use those machines. I quote here, 2 groups of 5 spent about 3 hours each counting 50 ballots. Mismatched tallies led to recounts and occasionally more recounts. Several noted how arduous the process was, with one volunteer lamenting, "I can't believe it's 2 hours to get through 25 ballots." County in New Mexico was also forced to recount primary ballots by hand after conspiracy-addled voters refused to accept the machine tabulations. What these people will discover is the same thing the people who ran that deranged audit in Arizona in 2020 discovered, which is there's no meaningful instances of fraud and the machine calculations are incredibly accurate. Now, let's be clear. Election administration in this country can be unwieldy. I'm a voter in a state that takes a really long time to vote, and it's really annoying. It can be kind of a bumpy ride. But we do have free and fair elections for now. Those elections, though, and the people who administer them are explicitly under attack. For example, the AP reports there have already been more than 100 lawsuits filed related to the midterm elections, which has not even happened yet. The majority filed by Republicans, targeting everything from mail-in ballots to rules making it easier to register to vote, and of course, the voting machines themselves. But there are ways to fight back.